Monday, May 10th, 2021. The time now is 6 p.m. and I'll call to order this regular meeting of the Town of Mead Board of Trustees. In accordance with the town's disaster declaration dated March 21st, 2020, and related to the COVID-19 virus and the town emergency electronic participation policy for regular and special meetings, this meeting will be held virtually in Zoom. Virtual access information, including the Zoom meeting link, has been provided on the town's website and at designated posting places at least 24 hours prior to the meeting. Roll call, please, Mary.
Mayor Whitlow.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Adams. All right. Mayor Pro Tem Adams. I'm going to come back to him in a second. Trustee Broadhead.
Yes.
Trustee Cartwright.
Here.
Trustee Harris.
Yes, here.
All right, and Mayor Pro Tem Adams.
Here.
Thank you. Mayor Whitlow, today is Monday, May 10th, 2021, and you do have a quorum.
Thank you. I would like to wish all the mothers a belated Mother's Day and take a moment of silence for those who are no longer with us. Thank you very much. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next is a review and approve agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda this evening? Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as is. Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please, Mary.
Trustee Harris.
Yes.
Trustee Broadhead.
Yes.
Trustee Cartwright.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Adams.
Yes.
Mayor Whitlow.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, motion carries. Moving on to our staff report by our town manager. Ma'am, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor, trustees. You have my report. I just wanted to highlight a few things. First of all, our sales tax, we just monitor it monthly. Everything is really looking good. It's been trending according to our projections, which is really good to know. So, no concerns there. Same with building permits. We continue to see a brisk building industry here in Mead, and that's good news for our budgeting. On Wednesday, we're having our broadband kickoff meeting with the 3 other towns over at Johnstown. I'll be over there most of the afternoon doing that. So all the various governments have now passed it. So now it's time to start moving forward. We had 875 loads at our cleanup this weekend. We set a record. It was incredible. Shout out to our public works who did a great job handling that much refuse in a short period of time. But I don't know, we're gonna have to start looking at either lengthening one of the days or something, because you know it's a lot to go in and out in a short period of time. Also, we are going to cancel the June 1st meeting. We don't have any agenda items. We had the items tonight, and then we have items on the 14th. So we are planning to cancel that. There still will be 2 meetings in June. And then I'd also like to just mention a couple things. I just want to mention how difficult hiring has been. I know there's a lot in the news that's blaming it on the excessive unemployment payments, and I think that might be part of it. But on really all levels, we've had difficulty. We've had an engineer position open for months. We actually have somebody who put in last week that we're going to interview, but it's been really tough. So I've asked other town managers, it seems to be across the board. So just so you know, I mean, we value our employees incredibly because, they do a great job, and I think it's important to value who you have, especially as you're starting to look to other places to get more employees, but, and that's all I have. If you have any questions about my report?
We'll start with David. Mayor Pro Tem Adams, do you have any questions or comments from the staff report?
No, I read through it, everything sounds great.
Thanks. Anyone else?
So, you have in your report that the, oh gosh, now I'm trying to find it. Highland Lake plan is, improvements are being put out to bid, but we didn't get the grant as part of the Safer Main Street programs. What part are we putting out to bid? Cause I know we're kind of doing that in phases. So what part exactly were we putting out to bid for?
So what we're gonna do is we're separating the project into the dock
Mm-hmm.
and everything else. And the reason is the dock is a specialty item, so it's gonna leave from port early. And then we're going to bid the rest of the project, so the dock will be under the supervision of the company that does the rest of the work, but it'll be a sub to it. As far as not getting the grant, we still have the Fishing is Fun grant. We tried to just get some more money for it and it didn't qualify. So, it won't change what we were gonna do with the project.
So when we get the bid, I guess, are we gonna, I mean, is it gonna be like, they're gonna bid for every single thing that was in that comprehensive plan?
No.
No? They're
No.
not? What are
So
we?
what we're gonna do, we're gonna call it's bid alternates.
Okay.
So we will have somewhat of an à la carte menu.
Yes, that's what I was.
So we'll have the bathroom, the shade structure, the dock is absolutely, it has to happen. If it ends up more expensive than everything else, we will have a dock. But what we're gonna do is à la carte,
Okay,
and then we'll find out what each thing costs, and then assuming our budget, we'll come back to the board and say, this is what we're recommending, this is what our budget is, and then we'll move forward. But the bathroom, the shade structure, the ramp, all of that is gonna be in the à la carte menu.
perfect, that's what I was hoping to hear, so, that was my only question.
Chris?
I just have a really quick question. Is the dock a floating dock?
It is not, we looked at both, and the floating is it causes problems with the fluctuating water level.
Sure.
So it's actually gonna have a permanent foundation. The design team looked at a bunch of options, and they pretty much agreed that it's better off to have a permanent dock. Especially as the water ebbs and flows, you can still use it all the time. Those floating ones, you roll them up and put them on the shore. So yeah, that's what the plan is.
Do we have permission to touch the bottom of the lake?
We do,
Okay.
we do.
That's all I was
reached
concerned
out to
about.
Mr. Litzenberger, who is the chairman of the company that runs that lake, and he said yes, and they welcome it. They think it's great, they think it's better for the lake, so yeah, we do.
Excellent, thank you.
Kudos to, Public Works, awesome job this weekend, thank you very much, tell Bo and the gang, thank you, awesome work. Anything else, Marilyn? Okay, thank you, appreciate it. Next we'll be having a police update from our chief Newbig.
Thank you, Mayor, trustees. As you know, this is Law Enforcement Week, and so lots going on at the police department with that. And it's kind of a combination of things for us. There's a serious side of that. We obviously reflect on the line of duty deaths that occur every year, and probably more importantly, what can we learn and how can we prevent those from occurring this year? And then also really a little bit of celebration for the officers, and they receive some recognition, which is obviously something that means a lot to them. So that all going on this week. I did want to cover just a few statistics if I can. Last year in America there were 362 line of duty deaths. Significant number, obviously, as you can imagine, were medical, but that's 141% increase from the year before.
49 of those were due to gunfire, 46 due to automotive related. In 2021, unfortunately, we're seeing that same trend this year, with 119 so far, a 6% increase from the same point last year. Gunfire 19, which is up 6%, automotive related 23, which is up 15% from last year. So what can we do to keep our officers safe, and how can we keep our officers from becoming one of these statistics? I just wanted to throw out a few things. Obviously, we appreciate the support of the town, and just want you to know kind of where some of the money is going, and that is really contributing to keeping our officers safe. Officers are required to wear ballistic vests. So we issue them one when they start. It's a high quality, expensive vest. Obviously we want that to work. They're not allowed to test it, but they are required to wear it every day. Reflective vest as well, just as important when they're out on those crashes on I-25 or Highway 66. They're required to wear a reflective vest. Those are items that keep them safe every day. And you may not think about it, but we have seen several officers that were probably had reduced injuries or no injuries in a car crash because they were wearing a ballistic vest and their seatbelt. So that combination really does work together to provide them some additional protection, something that you may not think about, but we do train them on that and make sure that they wear their seatbelts in conjunction with that. We provide them training, driving, firearms, tactics training, all important things to keep them safe, as well as de-escalation training, crisis intervention training. Sam Hansen, one of our newer officers, completed crisis intervention training just 2 weeks ago, and another officer, Dustin Shin, is going to that same training 2 weeks from now. And that, we call that, you might see them wearing the pin CIT, that's what that stands for, Crisis Intervention Training, how to deal with, how to recognize people in distress, and then recognize what that cause of that distress is, and helps them better to relate to that person, teaches them how to talk to people, and de-escalate situations when that's possible. I feel like that training is very important, and that is a requirement for all officers to go through that. TIMS training is a relatively new addition to the lineup. It's 4 hours of training, which is currently being done online. TIMS stands for Traffic Incident Management. This is in conjunction with Colorado State Patrol. Their officers are going through the same 4-hour block of training. Helps us to work together on I-25, better work with fire departments to work incidents out on major highways and set up the incident with the best protection that we can. A lot of times that's using a fire truck to block the incident to prevent a secondary crash that would occur within the scene of that ongoing incident. And so officers are taking that training currently. Several have already completed it. And we also provide safe, well-maintained vehicles for them to use, an important part of keeping them safe while they're driving, being able to respond emergent and avoid accidents and other things that would cause them injury. So all those things, as you can imagine, there's a lot to put on officers, but it's very important, and we stress that. Training is taken seriously. It's a very important part of what we do that keeps us safe and helps us to have a better response to our citizens out in the public. Little lighter note, this week we will take time to recognize the officers on Wednesday. The officers will sit down for a meal together, probably in a couple different groups. It's hard to get them all there at one time, so we'll do that in a couple different shifts on Wednesday, where they'll have a meal provided and have a piece of cake, of course. Thursday is the Weld County Memorial Service. That's at 6 p.m. Bittersweet Park in Greeley, and I will be there along with other chiefs from around Weld County, reading the names of the fallen officers from last year and recognizing them. And that's kind of the conclusion of what we have planned for this week. I would encourage anyone that has a desire to stop by, say hello to the officers. I did have some questions last week about ride-alongs by trustees, and we welcome that. Obviously with COVID, some of the public ride-alongs were restricted for a time. That's opening back up, so we relish that opportunity to have someone come out and see what officers are doing and get some personal feedback in that manner. I think it's an excellent way to have a learning experience in both seats, if you will. So I would offer that up as well, and that's all I have for you.
I had a question. I know we've talked about it in private, but I just thought it would be good for you to say it in public. Do your officers also go through training to recognize people who have autism or dementia or other kind of mental disabilities, and how to more delicately handle those situations? I know you said they do, but maybe you could elaborate on that a little bit.
Sure, that is the training that I was talking about. The CIT, or Crisis Intervention Training, incorporates that training. A lot of that is, well, about half of that training is classroom, about half of it is scenario based. So they actually hire actors to get into those roles and provide a very realistic display of what an officer would see if they encountered a person with that type of disability. And then the officer is coached in how to speak with that person. First of all, recognize what it is, and then how to speak with that person and what works in order to de-escalate that situation. And then probably one of the best resources that we currently have coming up online is North Range Behavioral Health is now responding to incidents in Mead, and that would be either personnel from their Frederick office, which is not quite 24/7 yet, but they're working that way, or the Greeley location, but they are responding to this area of the county now. So we have that resource as well. It's almost a co-responder program that we had talked about earlier. It's certainly working that way. They do have the ability for transportation now, and we just had training with them a week ago where they came to meet with the officers and give us the information about what resources they have there. So there's the capability they have now is to respond out to the scene, or officers to take that person to them. Both of those options are there. So what that does for us, if they respond to the scene, it just helps get the officer back into service faster. If we drop them off at their location, same thing. Officer can get back into service faster than having to drive them somewhere further. And then it also takes that load off of the ER. Because as you can imagine, for a long time, it's been the standard of officers to take someone in a mental health crisis and take them to the ER, which is good, but they're not always equipped to handle that person the best, whereas North Range has specifically set up these facilities for that purpose. So someone who needs detox or is in mental health crisis, that's a resource for those people that the ER would rather not come to them, and we would like to get them the best resource possible. So that's a big improvement. So just what you said, number one, the officers recognizing what the issue is as best as they can, and then getting them to a specialist who can further diagnose that, provide them some assistance, and then follow up with that person, which hopefully then keeps them from having to call us in the future, ideally. And so that's what we're striving for. But great question.
David, do you have any questions or concerns or comments for the chief? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I do have one thing.
Okay, Chris.
Just a comment. We noticed the other day that one of the officers was sitting in the school parking lot And that has a tremendous effect on slowing people down. As soon as the officer is seen, they slow down. So I was just saying that he's sitting in a great spot because you can just see the front of the police car right now when they're coming down, and they slow down at the end of Welker instead of right at the school, which is much, much better, much safer. So I don't know who it was that was doing it, but I commend him. And then 2 minutes after he left, some guy in a truck flew by at about 70 miles an hour. So it works. Having the officer there does work. So well done.
Thank you. We do like having the officers there in the school zone as much as possible. Wish they could be there all the time, but not as
Park a car
very
there.
responsible. That's enough.
Please extend our sincere thank you to all the officers from us.
Thank you.
We appreciate their time and service to helping us keep our citizens safe.
I will do that. Thank you.
Alright, thank you, Chief. Alright, thank you. We have 3 proclamations tonight, and the first one is National Police Week. Thank you very much, Chief, for being here tonight, and all officers for the Mead Police Department. And as Trustee Broadhead, will you please read the proclamation, sir?
Whereas the Congress and President of the United States has designated May 15th as National Peace Officers Memorial Day, and the calendar week in which May 15th falls is National Police Week. And whereas the members of the law enforcement agency of the town of Mead play an essential role in safeguarding the rights and freedoms of the citizens of our community, and whereas it is important that all citizens know and understand the duties, responsibilities, hazards, and sacrifices of their police department, and that members of our law enforcement agency recognize their duty to serve the people by safeguarding life and property, by protecting them against violence and disorder, and protecting the innocent against deception and the weak against oppression or intimidation. Therefore, Mayor Colleen Whitlow and the trustees of the town of Mead urge our citizens to join in commemorating law enforcement officers, past and present, who by their faithful and loyal devotion to their communities have established for themselves the enduring reputation for preserving the rights and security of all citizens. Now, therefore, Colleen Whitlow, Mayor of the town of Mead, Will County, Colorado, do hereby proclaim and call upon all citizens of the town of Mead to observe the week of May 9th through May 15th, 2021 as National Police Week in the town of Mead.
Thank you very much. Is there a motion to authorize the signing of this proclamation?
I will motion to approve the signing of this proclamation.
And I'll second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please, Mary.
Trustee Cartwright.
Yes.
Trustee Broadhead.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Adams.
Yes.
Trustee Harris.
Yes.
Mayor Whitlow.
Yes. Thank you, motion carries. Next is National Public Works Week. This second proclamation is for National Public Works Week, and we'd like to extend our appreciation for Erica Rasmussen and her staff. Trustee Harris, will you please read the proclamation?
National Public Works Week proclamation, May 16th to 22nd, 2021, Stronger Together. Whereas public works professionals focus on infrastructure, facilities, and services that are of vital importance to sustainable and resilient communities and to the public health, high quality of life, and well-being of the people of Mead, Colorado. And whereas these infrastructure, facilities, and services could not be provided without the dedicated efforts of public works professionals who are engineers, managers, and employees at all levels of government and the private sector who are responsible for rebuilding, improving, and protecting our nation's transportation, water supply, water treatment, and solid waste systems, public buildings, and other structures and facilities essential for our citizens. And whereas it is in the public interest for the citizens, civic leaders, and children in the town of Mead to gain knowledge of and to maintain an ongoing interest and understanding of the importance of public works and public works programs in their respective communities. And whereas the year 2021 marks the 61st annual National Public Works Week, sponsored by the American Public Works Association / Canadian Public Works Association, be it now resolved that Colleen Whitlow does hereby designate the week of May 16th to 22nd, 2021 as National Public Works Week. We urge all citizens to join with representatives of the American Public Works Association / Canadian Public Works Association and government agencies in activities, events, and ceremonies designed to pay tribute to their public works professionals, engineers, managers, and employees, and to recognize the substantial contributions they make to protecting our national health, safety, and quality of life, given under her hand and seal of the town of Mead, Colorado on this 10th day of May 2021.
Thank you very much. Is there a motion to authorize the signing of this proclamation?
I will motion to authorize the signing of the Public Works Proclamation next week.
Second.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? Roll call please, Mary.
Mayor Pro Tem Adams,
Yes.
Trustee Harris,
Yes.
Trustee Cartwright,
Yes.
Trustee Broadhead,
Yes.
Mayor Whitlow.
Yes.
Thank you.
Motion carries. Our final proclamation is our Older American Month. It has been a difficult year for many older Americans. We'd like to show our support by this proclamation. Trustee Cartwright, will you please read the proclamation?
I will. A proclamation in recognition of May as Older Americans Month. Whereas the town of Mead includes countless older Americans who enrich and strengthen our community, and whereas the COVID-19 pandemic has imposed tremendous hardships on our older Americans, including illness, social isolation, and even death, and whereas the town of Mead is committed to engaging and supporting older adults, their families, and caregivers, and whereas we acknowledge the importance of taking part in activities that promote physical, mental, and emotional well-being no matter your age, and whereas the town of Mead can enrich the lives of individuals of every age by promoting home and community-based services that support independent living, involving older adults in community planning, events, and other activities, and providing opportunities for older adults to work, volunteer, learn, lead, and mentor. Now, therefore, Pauline Whitlow, Mayor of the town of Mead, does hereby proclaim the month of May 2021 as Older Americans Month in the town of Mead, and urges fellow citizens to take time in this month to recognize older adults and people who serve them as a vital part of our community. Given under her hand and seal of the town of Mead, Colorado on this 10th day of May 2021.
Thank you very much. Is there a motion to authorize the signing of this proclamation?
I'll authorize the signing of the Older Americans Month proclamation.
And I'll second that.
All right, any discussion? Okay, roll call please.
Trustee Harris,
Yes.
Trustee Cartwright,
Yes.
Trustee Broadhead,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Adams,
Yes.
Mayor Whitlow.
Yes. Thank you. Motion carries. The board welcomes public comment for any item whether it's on the agenda tonight. The board will listen to your comments and take them into consideration. If you desire a conversation, please email the board or the town manager, or attend the quarterly open forum or monthly coffee with the mayor. If you are with us virtually, please indicate by raising your hand to speak. And when you're recognized, please state your name and address for the record. Is there anybody with us tonight that would like to speak at this first public comment period? Thank you very much. We'll move on to the consent agenda. The consent agenda contains items which are considered routine and enacted in one motion and vote. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll make the motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? Okay, roll call please.
Mayor Pro Tem Adams,
Yes.
Trustee Harris,
Yes.
Trustee Cartwright,
Yes.
Trustee Broadhead,
Yes.
Mayor Whitlow.
Yes. Thank you. Motion carries. We'll move on to our public hearing. This public hearing for staff-initiated amendment to the Mead Municipal Code. I've opened the public hearing now, and the time now is 6:29, and I will turn it over to the town planner, Jeremiah Fink. Sir. Members of the public who are interested in speaking tonight, please indicate by raising your hand. When you're recognized, please state your name and address for the board. And for the record, excuse me, sorry. Sir, you have the floor.
All right. Jeremiah Fettig, a planner. Good evening, Mayor and trustees. I'll give staff's presentation on the proposed text amendments. quick overview. So the current code is quite burdensome. It requires permission from surrounding properties within 300 feet to allow for home occupations as it stands now. It unnecessarily distinguishes between two different application types, minor and major. Major, the latter there, are subject to a conditional use review. That's a quite burdensome process, requires public hearings, you have to post your property, notify the neighbors within 300 feet, and notify the newspaper of record. So that's quite burdensome, and that is also a requirement for those home occupations that can't receive or acquire the necessary signatures if they're a minor home occupation. And additionally, there's unenforceable regulations, what staff believes are unenforceable regulations, saying there's limited to 25% of the floor area of the house as the home occupation. If you're working from home on your computer and you move room to room, it's kind of hard to gauge that threshold. This is our proposed new definition. There's some key language in here that I'm just going to point out. The first is incidental to. So home occupations need to be incidental to the residential use. And then that last little bit of language there that home occupations do not alter the residential character of the neighborhood. Those are the key points that we're looking at when we review and currently permit home occupations. If they're found to be compliant and don't alter the residential neighborhood, you can't tell that they're there. Staff believes that they should exist, and it should be a reasonable process for those to exist. So staff is proposing that the applicant now signs an affidavit that attests to the following items, these conditions. So limits the non-resident employees. It states that these must be incidental to or secondary to the home. Draws to the Chapter 16, Article 7, which is the sign code. So just ties those two sections of code together and limits what signage is allowed. Limits the retail sales, so you don't want some big wholesaler to come in there with deliveries and large storage of materials, outside of the property or the house or garage. Doesn't cause nuisances, traffic, excessive parking, noise, vibration, odor, glare. Limits the number of clients, customers, those types of things to 10 per day. Requires parking to be immediately adjacent to the home or in the driveway or the garage. Just limit those impacts to the adjacent, residential properties or properties. And it prohibits certain uses, so uses that are, typically quite intense, vehicle painting and repair, towing operations, welding shops, and then barber and beauty shops with more than one chair. If you go upwards of that, it kind of conflicts with the building code and becomes quite intense, and it, typically we find that it does alter that character of the community or the neighborhood. So the reason for this affidavit is that staff isn't making the determination that this is a proper use. They sign off, and if there's any complaints or any violation that's perceived or found from these, then we can take the proper recourse through code enforcement and through our local court to mitigate those and shut them down if need be. In conclusion, the revisions simplify the process for the applicant and staff. It's quite onerous on the applicant side and also for staff as it currently stands. We also know for a fact that many people just circumvent and don't go through the current process just because it's quite burdensome. The proposed conditions eliminate the need for neighbors' consent. They're no longer subject to conditional use review if they were, before for the major or the minor home occupations without that consent of the neighbors. So that just limits down that conditional use review, which is, typically used for much, much more intense uses like apartments and townhomes and those sorts of things. Removes the unenforceable regulations of 25% floor area. Allows conditions of approval, so that affidavit with those conditions. and it gives us a stance to come back to and enforce. We based this on this code, these amendments on the state model land use code and other communities. We looked at all of our adjacent neighbors and then some a little bit further away, just to get a grasp on what some other communities we knew were doing. In addition, it furthers the goals identified in the comprehensive plan, which seeks to encourage and facilitate remote work and home-based businesses. And with COVID, we've seen a spike in those types of efforts. So we just think we're coming in line with changing technologies and whatnot and practices. So to be recommended for approval or to approve these text amendments, we have to meet one of 4 criteria. The 3 in green are met. Staff believes are met. Items 1, 2, and 3. I won't go through and read those. So staff did do all of the proper noticing in the paper. Staff believes that the proposed text amendments satisfactorily meet the applicable criteria as stated in the last slide. The Planning Commission at its regular meeting in April recommended approval to the board by adopting Resolution 02-PC-2021. Therefore, staff requests the Board of Trustees approve ordinance number 961 here tonight. That's open it up for questions.
First, I'll open up to any members of the public who are interested in speaking tonight. Is there anybody with us tonight that would like to speak or ask questions, have comments? Okay. Any of the trustees? David, do you have any questions or comments?
No, I do not.
Okay, thank you very much. Any trustees? Chris? Excuse me, Tricia?
So we have to notify in the newspaper when we do things like this? Is there any kind of a notifying online requirement? Like, 'cause nobody reads the newspaper anymore. Like, just out of curiosity, is there any kind of online noticing requirement, or you just have to notice in a newspaper? That's weird. Huh, you would think that they would change that overall, but.
All the noticing is through newspapers, but, as you point out, very few people read, but I don't know, there hasn't been a movement to change that. It sure seems like they should, but,
It seems like you probably get more people seeing it online than you would in a newspaper, that's interesting. So
It does get posted on our website at the same time that it goes in the newspaper.
is it required though, or is that just something we do?
I'll let.
I don't believe it's technically required, but it is kind of a best practice.
Yeah.
I would note that the legislature did, there was a change to, state law where the local jurisdictions can, notice their public meetings on their website instead of posting. So that's been a change that Mead has adopted. So we do publish notice of all the meetings on the website. So I'd say that we're kind of going above and beyond what's required by, and I think, like I said, it's just a best practice, right, to notify
Absolutely.
all of the public regarding the meetings online as well.
So my next thing was, you were talking about how people have to, get approval of everyone within 300 feet of them, and they have to, does this remove some of that? And I see a lot of what you're talking about in here, but I didn't really see what we're removing as far as being burdened.
Yeah, so we're repealing that entire section.
So that whole section is going away.
So no more noticing of the neighbors, you don't have to get that petition signed or anything like that.
Okay, so all that goes away.
Right.
I just wanted to make sure, because I don't see a big giant blacked out thing, so just wanted to check.
Any other questions? Chris, Deb? All right, thank you for your time, appreciate it. Okay, is there a motion regarding ordinance number 961?
I will motion to approve ordinance number 961, an ordinance of the town of Mead, Colorado, amending section 16-1-150, 16-3-40, table 3.1, 16-3-50, 16-3-60F, and 16-13-30 of the Mead Municipal Code regarding home occupations.
And I'll second.
Any further discussion? Roll call, please, Mary.
Trustee Harris.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Adams.
Yes.
Trustee Broadhead.
Yes.
Mayor Whitlow.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, and motion carries. I will close the public hearing now at 6:40 PM. Thank you very much all for your time and effort on that. Next is new business resolution number 24-R-2021. This will be introduced by our planning director, Chris Penn.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the board. You have before you a request to consider approving a contract with Anderson Hollis to perform the public outreach and preliminary design work related to the bean plant property the town recently purchased. As you're aware, staff's issued an RFP for these services, has been working through the selection process for the last couple of months. There was a lot of interest in the project and we received a total of 14 proposals. And all of those had to be evaluated, so that did take some time, and so we appreciate your patience, but we're here today. We did end up interviewing a short list of 4 firms that we felt were head and shoulders above the rest of the group. In the end, we selected Anderson Hollis at the end of the day because we felt like their team had the best combination of expertise with adaptive reuse projects, experience with recreational facilities in particular, and then the ability to perform the work within a reasonable time frame and, of course, budget. As a result, staff does recommend the board approve the attached contract in the not to exceed amount of $71,680. And with that, I will turn it over to Elizabeth Hallis, who's here with her team via Zoom this evening. She's going to introduce her team, talk a little bit about their experience and approach to this project, and then even get into a little bit of scheduling, preliminary schedule for the work that's going to be done this summer. Thanks,
Welcome. Ma'am, you have the floor. Welcome, thank you.
Thank you very much. Can you all hear me okay?
We can, thank you.
Great, okay. Well, thank you so much. We're so excited to be here and to begin talking about the project and really starting our work to work with you all on the project. Chris did ask for us to give a little bit of a presentation, so if it's all right, I might like to share my screen as we go through kind of some of our initial thoughts on the project. And so I will attempt to do that, and hopefully technology will work with me today. Is that working?
Yes, it is, thank you.
Okay. I am not able to see it at the same time, so bear with me. Okay, great. Thanks again for allowing us to be here. So if I change my pages, are you able to see that?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. So with me tonight, I have Eric Coker of Hastings, Nevada. And I am Elizabeth Hallis with Anderson Hallis Architects. We are a 30-year-old firm based in Colorado, and we do public sector work all over the state and all throughout the West, in fact. And one of our specialties is adaptive reuse. So when we saw your RFP go out, we were super excited about it because our passion is both public sector work and really community-based work. So we were really thrilled to do that. And as I mentioned, we have an expertise in historic preservation and adaptive reuse. And so just knowing that you all are just such good stewards of your history within Mead and wanting to investigate this further with the feasibility study, we were thrilled. So Eric, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure, thanks Liz. I'm Eric Coker with Hastings and Chevetta Architects. We are a firm that practices nationally, and we have an expertise in community centers and recreation centers across the country. These are both for municipalities. We work for over 80 different municipalities. We've also worked for about 225 colleges and universities and about another 80 private and or high school entities that require the design of recreation and or sports facilities. So when we also saw this RFP, we were very excited, and we reached out to Liz because we knew she had the expertise in the historic preservation, and we thought we were a perfect marriage of bringing both our firms together to work on your feasibility study.
Exactly. Thanks, Eric. All right, and along with Eric's firm, we have a local firm of JVA, which some of you know, your very own Ken Clifford, civil engineer, as well as they have an expertise, their firm has an expertise in structural engineering with existing buildings and adaptive reuse. So we've been working with them for all of our 30 years of our firm, and so having them come on and do more investigations we thought was beneficial. So we're happy to have them on the team as well. All right, moving right along. As I mentioned, hopefully you're seeing some pictures here of some of our Colorado-based projects. We just wanted to demonstrate to you all some of our historic adaptive reuse projects. So we've got a wonderful school project up in Breckenridge, which was actually quite the opposite. It was a gymnasium natatorium that got turned into a library and community center, so kind of going a different direction, historic building, and had an interesting range of grants that we pursued with the town of Breckenridge. And then we have another example on the lower part of the slide within Steamboat, a senior center, community center, which was new construction, but trying to work within the design aesthetics of that community. So, and our firm has worked all the way from Ignacio to Fort Morgan, up and down across the state. So we're really pleased to be able to work with you all here in Mead. And just a few more examples of some of the rec centers and field houses that Eric has done.
Yeah, we've done a number of new facilities. We've also worked on historic structures. The example on the left is a warehouse factory built in 1886, and it was restored. The photo below it, it's a large open space. It was turned into a recreation center. We've just opened a old facility that's brand new. It's called the Powerhouse, and it's at a college in Wisconsin. It's a 1930s decommissioned coal-burning electric plant, and that building has been, as you can see, converted to recreation and athletic facilities as well as a campus center. And then the bottom picture, bottom right, we're in the process right now of renovating a 2 million square feet out of business outlet mall into one of the largest indoor field house sports complexes that when it's completed will be in the country. So we also have we've dipped our toes into the historic renovation process as it relates specifically to sports facilities.
Great. All right, well, one of the things that really struck us about your project is really that you've got an icon on the landscape. You know, you have the height, and you know, it really creates a backdrop from many views within town. And so I think that that's probably what encouraged you to try, you know, if there was any creative way to adaptively reuse that. And we really appreciate the fact that that you're considering this, and look forward to providing you with good data for future decision making. So within that, some of what we look at is the context. So certainly the form, the height, as I mentioned, the texture, the materials, and combined our teams, we really think that we can give you some creative ways that you can adaptively reuse these buildings or these portions of buildings. And so one of the first things that our team will do is get out on site and really assess the condition of the building and offer some suggestions of which portions we think would be best suited to pursue adaptive reuse. And with that, I am going to turn it over to Eric to talk a little bit about process, and then also some of the trends that we're seeing within this industry. So here we go.
As part of our approach and our community engagement, we see a series of workshops. These will be public forums. They'll be right in town, and they'll follow the course of the summer generally. We'll see a much more detailed schedule a little bit later in this presentation, but this is where we really start to garner the feedback from the community, and of course, including all of you as well. about what we might want to see in this facility. And then we've also have proposed in this process to do a community-based online survey. We find these, by doing an online survey, we can reach out to even more residents than we can certainly invite to in-person workshops. And between those two forums, we believe we will collect enough information that will help you as a group determine ultimately what we think should be in this potential new old facility. Next slide. And one of the things we do at these open forums or workshops is talk about the potential spaces that you often find in these facilities. And so the next few slides represent the spaces you typically have in these facilities, but they also represent some of the trends, some of the materials, and some of the design ideas we see in these facilities. And so any public building, like your city hall, has some level of a lobby space. Ours are, of course, multi-generational, and you can see all of them have some point of control or a staff member that's inviting people into the facility. It's got a little bit of hangout space, whether it's for kids or seniors. And then, as you can see, the interior is meant from an architectural standpoint to be warm and inviting and as open as we can make it, and of course filled with as much natural light as well. Next slide. We typically find meeting rooms in these facilities. Usually almost all communities are underserved in terms of the rental space to meet the needs of the community. These also work as senior centers, Meals on Wheels. They're typically divisible, so you have the flexibility to offer a room like the upper top corner, the upper right corner, where it's set up as a banquet or wedding venue. And then you can set it up in many other different ways. And typically, again, very nice finishes, natural light, and often even outdoor patio space. So you can have an outdoor pre-function space to an indoor event. Next slide. Of course, as it starts to morph into more of a fitness center, we would typically find exactly that, the kind of equipment, whether it's treadmills, weight machines, whatever it might be in these facilities. And again, this is a matter of choice. We know you also have a private provider that has a fitness center that's just a block away, so we want to respect that person's business and certainly talk about the opportunities that could be in your facility. Next slide. And then the courts, and originally this was introduced as kind of a potential community center or field house. Well, we count courts in that term of field house. And whether it's one court or several courts, whether they're wood, whether they have a jogging track that goes around the top of them, or whether they have synthetic flooring on the floor, whatever it is, we make these as multi-purpose as possible. Other than your high school gym in town, these typically become the largest spaces in town, and so while they are generally used most of the time for sports and recreation, if we apply the right kinds of finishes, acoustics, lighting, mechanical systems, we can also make these a very large community-based space for special events, blood drives, book fairs, antique fairs. It's really unlimited what you can also do in these spaces because of their size. Next slide. Of course, climbing is very popular in your part of the country. While we don't know yet whether the community would embrace a climbing wall, we certainly know that the elevator on the site, which is multi-story, it's probably 3 stories, almost 4 stories tall, could certainly accommodate an activity like this. But again, we'll reach out to the community to determine whether or not climbing or bouldering is something that they'd like to have in this facility. Next slide. And then typically, these facilities have, of course, either public restrooms or changing rooms, locker rooms. We're just seeing that these now are becoming more family-based or single-user spaces rather than kind of the old style of locker rooms. And of course, the locker room size and those support facilities really are based on ultimately the mix of meeting rooms, community spaces, and or athletic or recreation spaces. So The number of those will be determined, really as a ratio of the amount of activities that we, build into the facility. And then one of the last pieces, which we think is very important to the success of a community center like yours, is how do we brand and theme that facility? So whether it's the super graphics on the left that are part of a fitness center, or the Disney-like lobby that's in the upper right-hand corner, or whether it's a branded, in the case of the bottom right-hand corner, we're converting the old creamery in a particular community into a actually indoor pool and a community center. So we're always looking for that theme or branding opportunity, and of course, one of the reasons we were so interested in your project is it kind of comes because it's the elevator. It comes with that natural theming already in place, and so we would want to showcase that. Well, we want to learn from the community just how much we want to make that integrated into the design of the facility as well. Next slide. So the one piece that we think is important, though, as we start to talk with everyone in the community, is the blending of the spaces in this facility. And this is simply a graphic we use very often with community groups. The bottom represents the cost of building particular spaces in a community center. And then, of course, the left side represents not the revenue that those spaces can actually generate. Most community centers either have rentals or some level of fee or membership fee to help offset the cost of either debt retirement or the cost of operating the facilities. And so whenever we start to build a program or a listing of the spaces that you would typically find in a community center, we just want to make sure we have the right blend. In this example, on the upper right, gymnasium space is a very low cost construction, but actually can also generate a fair amount of revenue. On the opposite extreme of this, and I know we're probably not considering an indoor leisure pool, but in the upper right corner, we have an indoor leisure pool, the most expensive thing we can build in a community recreation center, but also a component that can earn you a significant amount of revenue. And then the example right in the middle is daycare. We often have daycare facilities. Those are low revenue producers and they're medium cost. So really it comes down to just finding the right blend, making sure it meets all the needs of interest of the community, but then it can also have the opportunity to be self-supported through either fees or tax levies or whatever the medium will be in terms of offsetting the operation costs over time. Next slide. So when we met 3 or 4 weeks ago, one of the things we did do, and this again was done in a vacuum because of course we really haven't had the opportunity to reach out to you all, but based on the demographics of your community, we put together what we thought would be kind of an ideal program. Again, this is based on our knowledge of doing municipal facilities all around the country, and we use some data based on who recreates and what those level of recreation are in particular communities. And so we built this listing. This is called a program. It's a listing of spaces. We group them by public spaces, activity spaces. You can see all of those are the fun rec spaces. We built in some recreation offices because typically recreation, whether it's your full recreation department, park and rec department that might move into this building, or whether it's just that subset that will manage the facility, we've developed some offices there. If you go to the next slide, we looked at some community spaces, and again, really technically undefined at this point because we haven't gotten feedback. But we often will do a community room. Sometimes we create youth spaces, and today, while it used to be pool tables and foosball tables, we're doing more esports facilities. We've done meditation rooms, and again, that component, the meeting rooms for the community use is often very important. The user support are just those spaces I mentioned earlier. Basically, whether it's the old style locker rooms or changing room spaces so that you can come in and change to participate in your activity. And then the last group are the things that just make the building operate. We need some data rooms and mechanical spaces in this, but ultimately this drove a net program, and if you can see it at the bottom, about 22,000 square feet, and we do factor up to account for circulation and walls and construction a factor of about 20%. So in this model, we were generally looking at a project that could be somewhere between 26 and 27,000 square feet. So that included renovating the 16,000 square feet of the existing facility, and then potentially adding perhaps another 10,000 square feet of space that might be considered new. Next slide.
Great, thanks, Eric. So one of our first tasks will be to really look specifically at the existing building and working with you all and looking at the site itself and just kind of learning a little bit more about what the overall goals are of the project, and then getting into some of the specifics as Eric has mentioned. So certainly looking at, long-term plans of circulation within the town, obviously solar exposure, where does it make sense for, a main entrance, some of the parking needs, things like that. Those are all things that our team would be looking at in a conceptual site plan and building plan, because those are really interrelated. So really, just to sum up a little bit here, in terms of kind of the key elements of success for the project, we're really looking forward to doing our outreach with the community and learning what the ideas that you all and the greater community have. As we mentioned, we feel that we've got a technical expertise both in adaptive reuse and the rec centers. And we really want to give you accurate data both on the existing building and the planned new designs that are possible, so that you have accurate project budgeting to make good informed decisions as you move forward. And we're also very keen on collaborative partnering relationships. So we're very much looking forward to this. So Chris also asked that I cover some of the next steps. So we've got kind of a preliminary schedule that we've kind of outlined, and it's a work in progress, but I thought I would just start to talk about kind of what this will look like over the next few months. We've broken it down into really 4 steps. One is just kind of the administrative pieces of getting a project going, which includes this meeting tonight, contracting, etc., looking at some of the background information. We realize that as of 2 weeks ago, you are the proud owners of the building, and we think that's wonderful. I think it was very visionary and wise for you to obtain that land, because as you know, your community's growing. So I think that having that as an outlet for this project or future projects was very wise. So obviously just some administrative steps to get the project kind of off the ground. And then assessing the existing building, as I mentioned, we're gonna scan the building so that we've got some good drawings to go from. We're also gonna have some of our team members, structural and architectural, look around the building, tour the building, and see really kind of in a more in-depth way what are the areas that really will suit themselves to good adaptive reuse. So we'll do that as one of the first steps, and then keep that in the back of our minds as we move forward. And then most important, of course, is the outreach, as Eric talked about, online outreach, as well as a series of workshops. So that gets into this series of items. So we'll be generating a draft of questions that would be in that online survey, and vetting those with the project team, and then kind of refining them and then publishing that to the online survey. And that'll be, between that and the first meeting, some of the basis of the beginnings of our work. We're looking forward to having in-person meetings. We really appreciate having that opportunity to have these workshops in person. So Eric will fly out and I will be there to facilitate these with our teams. And then we will develop some concepts based on the feedback from the community that we've gotten, both in the program, the list of spaces, as Eric mentioned, and then how those would go together architecturally in form. And we will also provide cost estimates to those as we progress. And so in a series of 4 workshops, at this point, sometime early fall, we'd be looking at a final presentation of our work of feasibility study of what this could be as an adaptive reuse project for the community. So with that kind of closes our presentation. Are there any questions for us?
Questions, comments?
Not for them.
Okay. David, do you have any questions or comments at this point?
No, I think it was a very well done presentation, gave us a lot of information, and look forward to hearing some exciting opportunities of what they can envision for the bean plant.
All right, well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time tonight, I really appreciate it, even though it's snowing like hell in here. Wherever you are, and your comfort of your home, or wherever your office is, thank you very much for your time tonight, and we'll, I guess we want to have questions
I
for
do
Chris?
have a question,
Okay.
but not for them particularly,
Okay.
they're actually more for Helen.
Okay.
So, first of all, I want to thank staff for, emphasizing the restoration thing, cause it's something I know that I've been pushing for. So I really appreciate that you guys went with a firm that kinda had that goal in mind as much as we possibly can. And I think a lot of people in town would very much like to see that. Now, whether they're willing to pay for it is a totally different thing, but I think they'd like to see us try to preserve that part. So thank you for that. But, my question for you, Helen, is can they get into that part of the building, the big wood grain elevator part, to kind of evaluate that yet? Or is that, cause I know it was boarded off cause it wasn't very safe, like what's the status of that area?
Yeah, they can. I mean, we'll have, on their team is a structural engineer, and, I don't believe there's any danger. It was more a matter of there was so much stuff packed in there that you really couldn't get in, but,
Oh, okay.
yeah, they'll be able to get in and around it.
Perfect. Okay, that was really my.
Don't scare them off, trust me.
Come
Right, team?
I don't think they're easily scared.
We're not easily scared, we've seen worse.
And the JDA folks have already been in there, so.
Oh, good,
Yeah,
okay.
they've already been up in there.
They brought their hammer and nails.
Yeah.
Good, alright. Any other questions or comments? Alright, thank you again for your time tonight, we appreciate it. We look forward to, hopefully approving this resolution and getting this, in line with what the schedule was, that, as you say, presented tonight. So thank you very much, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Is there a motion regarding resolution number 24-R-2021?
I will motion to approve resolution number 24-R-2021. A resolution of the Town of Mead, Colorado, approving an agreement for professional services between the Town of Mead and Anderson Hollis Architects PC concerning Recreation Center / Fieldhouse Facility Project Architectural Design Services. Do I need to have a not to exceed amount? I don't know where that would be. What is it? I closed that part. Not to exceed $71,680. Thank you, Chris.
You are welcome. I'll second that.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion? Okay, roll call please.
Trustee Cartwright?
Yes.
Trustee Harris?
Yes.
Trustee Broadhead?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Adams?
Yes.
Mayor Whitlow?
Yes. And again, thank you very much for being with us tonight. We look forward to many months of online and in-person meetings, so thank you very much. We appreciate your time.
Thank you very much, we look forward to it. Goodbye.
Bye.
Good night.
Next is our second public comment period. Again, please raise your hand to speak. When you're recognized, state your name and address, and please limit your comments to 3 minutes. I don't know if there's anybody out there that would like to speak, but we'll just give it that 10-second rule. All right, we'll move on to a legislative summary by our town attorney. Sorry, you had the floor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Nothing exciting, right?
Well, I will, I'll try to just give you a highlight of 3 bills that I'd like to bring to your attention and try to keep it to, no more than 5 minutes. But there's 3 specific pieces of legislation that I'd like to mention tonight. The first is Senate Bill 250, or Senate Bill 250. The second is House Bill 1027, and the third is what I consider to be probably the big one, right, which is Senate Bill 260, which is the new transportation bill that has been recently introduced. And I understand that they, on that transportation bill, it was introduced late last week. My understanding is that the Senate Finance Committee held the first hearing on that bill this afternoon, and I was driving up here, so I have no idea how the first hearing went with the Senate Finance Committee. But let me give you a brief rundown of these 3 pieces of legislation. The first one Senate Bill 250 is really kind of a cleanup bill for election code provisions in the state of Colorado. So it has a lot of cleanup provisions for Title I, which is the Uniform Election Code. And that's the election code that the state and the counties typically will follow. There are also some cleanup provisions in Title 31, the Municipal Election Code, which is the code that the town follows for its local elections. Those changes are mainly technical in nature, but there are also changes that deal with recall elections. It's my understanding that Karen Goldman, representing the Municipal Clerks Association, testified in favor of that bill, I think late last week. I'm unsure of the exact date. But that looks to be on its way to passing and probably being on the governor's desk relatively quick soon. The second, House Bill 1027, this title of this piece of legislation is a bill for an act concerning the authorization for certain alcohol license holders to offer alcoholic beverages for consumption off the licensed premises. So there's a couple of things that are happening with this bill. As you all know, during the pandemic, in order to support local restaurants, there was a change to state law that allowed restaurants to offer, when you order food to go, you can also order booze to go, right? So you can have beer or liquor or wine that you pick up with the food. So the purpose of this bill is to extend that, right, into the foreseeable future to continue to help restaurants. I think the more interesting part of this bill for you all is that there's a provision in this bill that would allow for communal outdoor dining areas, where essentially two or more liquor license holders can apply to like any other liquor license process. It's going to be a dual track, right? You have to have state approval and local approval. But you can have a communal outdoor dining area where alcoholic beverages would be able to be served. And what's interesting here is I know there's been some discussion in the past where the board has been at least supportive on a conceptual level of forming a common consumption area on Main Street that would allow for kind of creating an outdoor seating area where people might be able to order a margarita at the Mexican restaurant, but then maybe walk to another liquor license establishment and have that as part of the common consumption area. Now, what's neat about this is that forming a common consumption area is actually kind of difficult. I mean, there's a lot of steps that you have to go through procedurally, including the formation of a marketing association or promotional association under state law. This is a much more streamlined, simplified process, and I think would result in the same opportunities for economic development and kind of creating that kind of festival atmosphere ultimately downtown. So that's something that I'm going to continue to track, and we'll see if this ultimately passes out of the legislature this session. The third bill, as I mentioned, is kind of the big one, right? This is the new transportation bill. This was introduced late last week. The Senate Majority Leader, Steve Finberg, is one of the primary sponsors. In the Senate, as I mentioned, the initial hearing was held today by the Senate Finance Committee. So this is titled Concerning the Sustainability of the Transportation System in Colorado, and in connection therewith creating new sources of dedicated funding and new state enterprises to preserve, improve, and expand existing transportation infrastructure, develop the modernized infrastructure needed to support the widespread adoption of electric motor vehicles, and mitigate the environmental and health impacts of transportation system use. So a couple of things. This is really in this bill, and I did not print a copy of this for you all because it's 197 pages long, just this one piece of legislation. But what this bill does is it kind of creates a package of fees, new fees that will be imposed, utilization of state enterprises, and stimulus funds to support statewide transportation infrastructure. So there's also a very large emphasis on the EV, or electric vehicle infrastructure, in this bill, and there will be millions of dollars that will be ultimately set aside to be given to local governments to support multimodal transportation efforts, in the state. It's projected that this, bill will ultimately, direct the spending of approximately $5 billion over 10 years in the state of Colorado. And I think what's important for the Board of Trustees to note is that it's projected that the town's share of the HUTF funding, or the Highway Users tax funding, is not projected to decrease. In fact, it's projected to grow over the years. So it's my understanding that CML has come out with a position to enthusiastically support this bill. But just to give you an idea, I mean, and Helen may have, or Mary as the treasurer may have better numbers than I do, but it's my understanding that right now the town gets about $15,000 a month in HUTF revenues. So it would be projected that over time, with these new sources of fees and stimulus funds that will be flowing through the state to the local governments, that you should probably see your share of those HUTF funds increase over time. So again, this is a pretty new piece of legislation, and it'll be fast tracked because there's not too many days left in the session. And I know, Mayor, you've been, had a lot of meetings discussing, where they've discussed this bill. So I don't know if you have anything that you'd like to share with the members of the board.
No, I don't. I just, just a couple weeks left of this session. There's talk that they are going to extend maybe this session in order to get some of these bills across. So this, I'm sure, will pass with some support from big organizations like CML and Dr. Cog and many other cogs around. A lot of conservatives don't like it. And it's just a way for, us to get revenue, to fix the roads and so on. So it is what it is. I'm sure it's gonna pass, and I'm sure there may be some amendments in the future, but I think it's gonna pass.
So those are the three that I had for tonight.
Questions, comments? Okay. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. By the time we make it back together, the whole session may or may not be done. We don't know. All right, next elected official reports. Any of the trustees would like to speak on any subject tonight? Tricia, sorry.
So we're having the volleyball games out at Founders Park and the parking lot out there, and then everybody started parking beyond that to the south of the parking lot. Have we thought about expanding that parking lot to be legit parking further out there? Just something I thought because I'm one of the people that park on the grass out there. So when you drive into the parking lot, it ends, but there's more space that we could put 6 to 8 more parking spaces or so. I don't know, this is something to think about.
Yeah, we'll take a look. We've looked at
Founders
it
Park has
before.
always been, the parking has always been
Right.
such Achilles heel of using those fields for sports stuff. So it was just thought.
Yeah, we'll take a look at it. I doubt, we would come back to the board with a proposal. I mean, it would still.
It's just something to
We'll take a
look
look
into.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The email that you sent out with the Weld County needs assessment thing and the things that were commented in there, do you have any idea the number of respondents on that? Like, how many people are we looking at that made these types of comments?
I don't have that.
Oh,
It was done several months ago. Don reached out. But I think he just did a collection of a smattering of comments that he got from it.
Okay.
But I thought it was interesting, that's why I shared it.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting too, they need more condos, townhouses, and rentals. I was like, wait, what? I mean, I think that we do. People can't afford houses anymore, a lot of people, so. But, okay, I was just curious how many people had made those types of comments. And then we were talking about animal permits at our meeting the other day, and it got me thinking the other day. Why do we require people to get animal permits and pay a fee to have animals in town? I mean, I get it obviously you can't go have a horse in downtown Mead, but what is the purpose behind the permits and people having to pay additional fees and fill out more paperwork just to have some chickens at their house? I'm just curious what the reasonings behind that, why do, I mean, I know we're not the only municipality that does it, but why?
I have no earthly idea, Mary.
Well, my guess, even though I didn't write it into the code either, my guess is the reason that we do it is for the health, safety, and welfare of all of our residents, right? You wanna make sure if people are keeping animals, that they are keeping them safely, that, you know, they're not gonna have 50 chickens in a small lot downtown and not have 20 head of cattle on 2 acres in a larger lot.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the reason is because this is a community and it's not the Wild West, you know?
Right.
So I think it is to control what's allowed.
But if people don't actually do it because it is an extra fee that they have to pay to do it, is it really serving its purpose? And I mean, how many people, I mean, you said we've not even close to maxed out our chicken permits, and I have a really hard time believing that there's not at least 30 different people in the town of Mead, or well over that actually have chickens. So is this, but I would think that a lot of people aren't gonna register their chickens because they don't wanna pay an extra fee to do it.
Well, we haven't had code enforcement consistently in the years that I've worked here in town.
Yeah.
You know, so consistent code enforcement is a way to control some of that. I mean, you may recall that there was often a rooster walking up and down 3rd and Welker and cackling at day and night. You know, again, that's the reason for a permit, but you also have to have enforcement with any type of permit.
Okay. I'm just thinking you'd probably get more people to actually do it if it didn't cost them more money. But I mean, I guess I get on our part that somebody has to process that permit and take the time to do it. But I don't know, it was just one of those things where I'm just thinking, there's no way that we don't have at least 30 people in town that have chickens, but they don't register them because, or they don't get the permit because they just don't wanna pay a fee.
Either that or they don't know.
Or they don't know, maybe, but.
I was gonna say, we know about dog licensing, and I think cats have to be licensed, is that right?
Correct.
Yeah, so I don't know how many people register cats, because there's more cats in this town than I could possibly imagine you have records of. But I'm pretty sure that you didn't know about the chicken registry, and the only reason I know about it is because of somebody that I know has a chicken permit in the neighborhood, so that's the only reason I even brought it up, is I thought it was kind of interesting. Maybe we should make it a bit more, there you go, Fun Fact Friday.
Well, you know, I mean, I understand what you're saying, like, what do you need it for and why should people pay it? But think about the person that lives next to the person that has chickens, okay?
My neighbors complained when I had a rooster. I bought them as pullets.
Right.
They're supposed to all be females, one
Right.
turned out to be a rooster. Yeah, he started crowing, one of my neighbors complained, and I had to end up I got rid of the rooster. So I would think though, if somebody lives next to that kind of situation, they're gonna report it, they're gonna.
But reporting it, if we had no system of registry or any kind of regulations with it, then you're really just, you know, whistling in the dark, because I say that because my niece right now is dealing with somebody next door to her who have chickens and a rooster, and it is really annoying, and there's no rules, there's no HOA yet, it's a new housing development. So if they had a system in Berthoud, this is in Berthoud, if they had that system, she'd have something to fall back on. But there's no regulations to it. So really what you're doing is protecting everybody's rights, the chicken owner and the non-chicken owner. That's, I mean, I never would have thought about it till my niece has been going through the hell she's been going through.
Yeah,
So,
roosters suck.
it's not, but it's not done to be punitive. It's really done as a system of order. And with code enforcement, you know, you gotta look at everybody's rights. The owners of the chickens and the non-owners. You know, cause a non-owner can be really annoying, and if you say, hey, look, I'm registered with the town, I have the limited, I assume there's a limited number, or whatever, but I think it protects both sides if you have those regulations in place. That's all I would say.
Well, having regulations, I can see that, I mean, but what's to stop somebody who has 4 dogs in their backyard and yet they never pick up their dog crap, and it's just a stinky, nasty mess back there.
Oh,
They've got their 4 dogs registered. I mean, and so I get having regulations that say, like our HOA, we have in our code that you have to keep the animals in a certain condition, you can't let it get gross and what have ya. But I just, I don't know, it's just something I've kind of been contemplating since our meeting is, having regulations, okay, you can only have 4 chickens with no roosters in town, I get that. But people can still have those and then not take care of them and not, be respectful of their neighbors.
Well, but then it becomes a nuisance. So, I mean, the question is what's a nuisance and what's, like the soft purring of the chickens that you like, but it's government tries to make order and tries to make it so everybody can coexist.
Yeah.
And without being too onerous, it seems to me our regulations aren't really over the top. I mean, go to Boulder or go to Fort Collins, I mean, their rules tend to be a little more stringent on about everything, so. But I mean, we're always open to improving, and understanding is the first step towards improvement.
Yeah.
So,
I do think that's a good idea, Fun Fact Friday.
yeah.
Put in there about.
Did you know?
Did you know? There you go. Yep, oh, did you wanna bring up this library thing, cause I gotta get going. So this letter to the library, I read through it, I think it sounds great, I think we should approve it and send it out. What else do we need to talk
It's
about?
okay, I'm not gonna read it. It was, yeah, okay, that's fine, yeah. So anyway, we've been working with Helen to draft the letter since the library hasn't done anything for us for the last, couple of months. So, we'd like to send this letter out to Dr. Ward. David's gone, he had to go to a meeting, so he won't be with us for the rest of the night, but, I'd like to get this out.
Do we not have, do we have to vote on that or anything?
No, just
okay.
a head nod.
Okay, alright.
So yes from Tricia,
Yes.
yes from
We're
Chris,
all for it.
yes from Deb, okay. Alright, is there anything else from the trustees? Where'd you go, that's out the door?
I just had one quick question
Yeah.
for Marcus. Do we have any, will there be an update on the plastic bag regulations that are being shoved through the state right now?
I can take a look at that.
Tricia, can you
If
stay
you
by the
would,
door
just
so we
bags.
can, just stay right there.
Every
Stay there really quick.
single-use plastic item.
We have to have a forum.
So it's.
That's what I was asking, since
way
David
bigger
left and we
than
have
I
corn
think.
side.
Okay, I'll take a look at that, and maybe I'll bring that back at the next meeting.
It might be over by then.
Well, it either will have passed or not, right? We'll probably have a good idea, but I'll put that on my list of things.
We'll send you a link.
It's a crazy thing, but,
Alright, thanks.
okay, done.
Okay, anything else? We need a motion to adjourn, so Tricia can leave.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Roll call please.
Trustee Harris.
Yes.
Trustee Cartwright.
Yes.
Trustee Brother.
Yes.
Mayor Whitlow.
Yes. Thank you, motion passes, and the 10/20/21 regular meeting of the Board of Trustees is adjourned at 7:28. Thank you, please drive safely.